Now, before we get fully into everything, the title of this lecture, as you can tell from the giant letters on the board, is Opening Yourself Up to Spirit Communication. That was the very first thing that I learned as a paranormal investigator, because there is a doorway between our world and the spirit world. The way I like to think of it, almost like that door there. You can open that door, you can close the door. Naturally, when that door is closed, no one can walk in or out. But when the door is open, anyone can come interact. Same thing as if that door were to be cracked. Some things can get in, some things can and can't get out. So that's how my dad first explained it to me. He said, if that door is going to be open, you have to be, one, aware of it at all times, always being in control and aware of your environment. And two, you have to know when to close the door and how to close the door. So, type spirits was also the very first thing I learned, aside from opening yourself up to spirit communication. And these two actually go hand in hand. I'll explain here in a second, but residual. Can't interact, replay of events. Basically, think of it, I believe it is the stone tape theory that says certain surfaces, certain objects can retain memories, energy in them. I believe it was a scientific report that said that energy and memories are energy. So, certain weather conditions can actually cause certain things to happen. There was actually an experiment done in England, I believe it was the late 1800s, where a certain time of day, certain time of year, this bell would ring. And so this guy got to noticing, hey, this isn't doing it every day, it isn't doing it once a week, twice a week, it's doing it only on, I believe it was sunny days, but only in the morning time about sunrise. So he started cataloging all the weather patterns whenever the bell would ring. And he discovered that it was the same exact every time the bell would ring. So that's what really started residual activity. Now, like I said, it's replay of events. Now, the thing that's interesting about residual activity, I like to think of it almost as watching a video of the past. Because more than likely, they cannot interact with us. Because, you can't interact with a replay. Because it's something that, in a way, I think of it as the world filmed something for you to enjoy at random points. It's just sadly, it doesn't tell you when it's about to start that little video. But that's when you get a lot of stories of spirits walking in and out of walls. Because, at one point, there might have been a doorway there. Or the spirit just might have a really bad sense of direction. That is something that could happen. But, how y'all doing? But residual spirits are tricky because you can't really, summon them. You can't really directly get them to show up. Like you can intelligent spirits. Intelligent spirits, to a point, you can get them to appear almost on command. But residual, what we do is we have a bunch of K2 meters, we have REM pods, we have a bunch of little sources that you can use to kind of feed energy into the air, because spirits, they rely on energy. That is the only way that they can manifest. That's how they speak. The more energy a spirit has, the more it can speak, the more it can show itself, the more it can manipulate your physical environment. So what we like to do is we like to completely douse a room with energy. And we also like to have the doorway leading into it filled with energy because, like I said, it's a bit like a doorway with a gigantic light saying, enter here on it. So that's how we like to approach those situations for residual spirits. Now, like I said, they are very tough to communicate with. They're very tough to tell because sometimes intelligent spirits can mask themselves as residual experiences. And something we'll talk about a little later, darker entities, they will mask themselves as peaceful residual spirits and peaceful intelligent spirits so that they can weaken your psychic defenses. And then that leads into basically the Conjuring series. So the other type of spirit I learned about was intelligent spirits. Now, obviously, where residuals can't interact, intelligent spirits can interact. And they can also give intelligent responses, but it's very tricky, especially the location that you're dealing with, because you may have a bunch of stories of Old Man Jenkins haunting this old shack. You might go in there, and you start getting the name Billy, or you start getting the name, like Sean, or something like that. It doesn't make sense. That's part of the paranormal field. You have to understand when you investigate an area, you're not just opening yourself up to the spirits of that area. You're basically putting out a gigantic beacon in the area, and the spirit sphere. That's a word I just came up with, by the way. You're basically putting up a giant signal that says, I am opening myself up to you. If you want to communicate, come here now. And so us as paranormal investigators, it's really hard when we're dealing mainly with residential cases, because we're trying to form this picture together of what the family is encountering, what they're experiencing, and then from there you can go on how to deal with it, how to get rid of it, that kind of stuff. But it's really hard when you start getting these other spirits, because you can't really put a finger on it. So what we like to do is we like to usually, and this is going to go into 4, which I'll talk about here in a second, we like to hang around a location usually for about 2 or 3 days. going back into the paranormal, one thing I learned early on is the spirits don't start on command. With Spirit Box, EVP, I've noticed it takes about 5 to 10 minutes for the spirits to warm up. That's how I like to think of it. You know, you randomly have someone come through the door, or come through the door of your home, you're not instantly going to open up yourself to them, start a conversation with them. You're going to be a little skeptical of, who's a stranger just walked in my house without permission. So what we like to do when we go into investigations, we'd like to say, my name is Fife, I'm a paranormal investigator, we've heard claims of paranormal activity, we want to know who you are, why you're here, and know more about your life. That way, the spirits know why we're there, we have respectful intentions, and then we can proceed from there. One thing that's also key, very important to add, is always say, respectfully communicate with us. Because if you don't say that, you open yourself up to disrespectful spirits and the negative spirits that come and interact, and that's never fun, never ever fun. But when you open yourself up to communication, you have to understand you're going to notice a lot more than just spirit activity. You're opening yourself up to a whole new world, a sort of metaphysical, spiritual world. You're not just going to notice, ghosts, dead people. You're going to notice elemental entities, which are basically, if you know Native American lore, they talk about the spirits of the forest, spirits of the woods. Those are elemental entities. Think of them as like guardians of the earth. They try to protect things. They're almost like tricksters into where they can be good, they can be bad. If you're going on the spiritual pecking order, they're about the same level as demonic in terms of what they're able to do to our physical world. But, like I said, they can be either good, which is really good, or they can be bad, which I'm actually going to play some clips for you here later of a run-in with an elemental entity that was not the friendliest chat. Was not.
Sorry, you said they're on the same level as demonic?
Demonic.
Oh, demonic.
Yes, demonic.
I was like, wait, hang on. Okay,
Yeah, that would have been something completely different.
I've heard that one before. Okay.
But when you go through these types of spirits, you're going to learn throughout the years, as I did, it's not just these two spirits. If I was to write down a list of all the different types of spirits that you can interact with, I would probably need a bigger board than this. But basically, they fall under the categories of not being able to directly communicate and being able to directly communicate with you. So, rules of a good investigator. This is very important, something that over my 10 years of doing this, I have constantly retooled, all that stuff. But be respectful to the living and the dead. Basically, if you know common sense, the golden rule, do unto others as you would do unto yourself, it basically applies to the spirit world. Because you have to remember, this is something a lot of people, strangely enough, they don't get. Spirits were people too. Just because, Gertrude passed away, that doesn't mean she's going to completely be a new Gertrude. She's going to be the same person, just without a physical body. So, keep that in mind. And something that I've noticed is when you are more respectful to the spirits, they tend to actually communicate with you more. And that's something that's very important. And of course, with spirit communication, is you want as much spirit communication as possible, and you want them to be as respectful as possible. For those of you just joining, thank you all for coming in. Know why you're in the field. This is actually one a lot of people don't talk about, but it's very important. I came into the paranormal field because I had questions. I still have questions this day. 10 years of doing this, I've answered maybe 2 out of the hundreds of questions I have. There are some people that get into this field because they want, to answer these questions. They have questions of their own. There are some people that get into this field for the thrill of it. Because, I will admit, being on investigation when stuff starts happening, it's very thrilling. It is almost as cool as being on a scary roller coaster. And then there are some people that they have a very skeptical approach to it, and they go to haunted locations, and they just want to try and debunk everything, which is perfectly fine. It's very important to be a healthy skeptic, but there's a fine line with being a healthy skeptic and then being straight up disrespectful. You have to be aware of that line and how close you are to it. So, if you want to be a paranormal investigator, which I believe there is a difference between paranormal investigator and a ghost hunter. A ghost hunter I see is more of a thrill seeker. A paranormal investigator, I like to think of it as, you're actually investigating, in a way scientifically and spiritually, the paranormal field. So that's how I think about it. And it's very important because once you know why you're in the field, you can be honest with yourself, your team, your clients, the spirits, and whatever location you're investigating at. It's very important that you always be honest, because if you're not, the spirits can sense that. They can pick up on that, and that will repel them away. And what that does also, when you think you're not 100% sure of yourself, that will create unsure energy. I'm sure there's a better word for it, but I don't call it unsure energy. It creates unsure energy and also creates negative energy. And what that does is that will attract negative entities towards you, which you don't want that. Trust me, it's happened before. Rule number 3, never fake anything. That should really go without saying for basically anything. I've never known anyone personally that is fake stuff, but it happens all the time. What that can do that, you might not really think about at the time. You might come up, if you really want to fake something, it's very easy to. You can say, have a piece of string on a door, and you're like, oh, it's not hurting anyone. It's entertaining them. It's what they want to see. They want to see stuff happen. But it actually has, in a way, a reverse effect because, and this is something very interesting, a lot of people don't get it. This is how stories get started at locations. You have someone that fakes a ball rolling across the floor. You have nothing like that happen for a few more months. Someone else sees that video. They're like, hey, that was kind of cool looking. It was creepy. What if we faked it because the first one was real? And let's, get that wow factor. Let's get people excited talking about our group, the location, that kind of stuff. And so that happens. It happens 3 or 4 times. Suddenly you have this legend that, when you're upstairs in the nursery, the ball will roll across the floor. So you have real paranormal investigators with good intentions. They come in and they're like, okay, we have this ball set up. We're going to see if it rolls like they say it does and like it does in the videos. And 1, you're wasting time on technically something that was never true to begin with. And 2, you're opening yourself up to anything that wants to feel that role. I like to think of legends and stories as roles for spirits. You have, going back to the old man Jenkins thing, that is his role in the spiritual world. He haunts that shack and anywhere else he's able to go to. So you have, take St. Albans Sanatorium, for example. You have the spirit of Jacob in Jacob's room. That's essentially his role. He haunts his room. Now, he can go in other places. He can do other things, but that's mainly what he's known for. When you look for that spirit, you're looking for him in that room. So when you have a role that's imaginary, really anything, it's a vacant role, and you're having an open casting call for literally anything and anybody to come in and take that role. That can be good and that can be bad. So as most of the things on this list, it has to do with safety. Safety to the investigator, safety to the spirit, safety to the location. Because spirits, you can invite something into a location that will take over. There was a location I investigated, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it was close to Richmond, Virginia. And it was partially on a Civil War battlefield. And it had shadow people, Civil War soldiers, and phantom voices. That was it. That was really it. It was cool. But slowly over time, something else started coming in. Something else darker, more malevolent. I saw it once, and it's one of the scariest things I've ever seen in my life. It wasn't there to begin with. It was never there anywhere near it to begin with. But what happened was a story was told of a tragic event that happened in a house next door, and something filled that role. Because something as investigators, we fall into the trap of, and I'm guilty of this sometimes myself, just because there's a tragedy at a location does not mean there's a spirit there. You might go to a place where there was like a skirmish. You're like, okay, there's Civil War soldiers here because Civil War soldiers died here. That might not be the case. But because you go back over and over, you want it in your mind to be true. You want there to be Civil War soldiers. You might either mentally create one, because the mind is a very powerful thing. I have a theory that about 55 to 60% of all paranormal activity we experience and record is mental. It's something we create ourselves. But if you create these roles for these locations, like I said, anything can fill that role, and it's very important that you don't let that happen. Now, help others, that goes back into, there's a big movement in the paranormal field. It started when I first got into the field, and it's kind of died down, and it's coming back. It's called paranoia. Once again, golden rule. Help others, they'll help you. This is a field that, we'll go ahead and go to number 6. This actually is a double point. Be humble. There are no such things as experts, in my opinion, in this field, because how can you be an expert of an unproven field? There is that chance that in all of this, that we are talking to thin air. There is that possibility. There's a possibility that it's a government experiment. They're trying to, program people's minds. They're trying to project their own sound. Or, it might be like a gas. It could be anything. We could be dealing with aliens. We could be dealing with interdimensional entities. So when it comes to the paranormal field, we do not under any circumstances, know what we're dealing with. Pretty much the entire time. You can get a good estimate judging by the energy, because each little entity, whether it's good, bad, in the middle, it will have a distinct energy. So you can tell kind of what camp it falls under, but you will never truly know what it is, aside from residual, which I'm kind of on the fence about calling residual spirits true paranormal activity, because, when I think of paranormal activity, I think of, the living dead almost, creatures, UFOs, that you can, in a sense, interact with. Even if it's, you see Sasquatch in the woods, he either runs towards you and tries to kill you or runs away, that's still an interaction. Aliens, you see a weird light in the sky, you're still technically interacting with it. It's interacting with your environment. Residual spirit, it doesn't interact with your environment, and it doesn't interact with you 9 times out of 10. Now, rarely there will be a replay, and there's enough energy given to the spirits where it can manipulate something in your environment. Now, as for that's the spirit really manipulating the environment, or whether or not that's almost like a force field, a force bubble it's giving off this little thing, and it's somehow able to make something move. It's able to make a sound. I don't know. That's one of the questions that I want to answer. So being humble is something that, I learned very early on, almost, as early as I learned the types of spirits, and I think it's one of, if not the most important thing you can learn in the paranormal field. Going back to being thorough, this is very important, going back to know why you're in the field. There are some people that when they investigate, they don't want to know the history of a location. I fall into the camp of, I want to know everything plus extra about the location. So when you're being thorough, like we'll take St. Augustine Sanatorium, it's my favorite place. I've been there 7 times in 2 years. I looked at every blueprint that's ever existed of the building. I looked at settler road maps dating back to the mid-1700s. I looked at all the skirmishes in the area. I looked at the history of the guy who built the place, the guy who turned it into a sanatorium. I've tried to find out the name of all the doctors, the ones who did the electroshock, the hydrotherapy, allegedly eugenics. The reason I did that is, 1, to be extra thorough, and then 2, you can ask location-specific questions. As paranormal investigators, in order to prove that we're actually experiencing something paranormal, you have to give solid, concrete evidence. That is, if I was to pull out a voice recorder and say, is anyone here with us? If a voice says Ted, that's someone's name, but it's not really responding necessarily to the question. But if it was to say yes, that's an intelligent response. That is the holy grail of what you want in the paranormal field. So when you go to a battlefield, you're going to ask questions about the battle. You're going to ask questions about the military. When you go to a cemetery, you might ask questions about the environment around them, the tombstones. See if they can actually see us, hear us, and see the tombstones around them. Going back to the sanatorium thing, they can see their environment. And it's cool for me, where I'm a historian, you can piece together the history of a place, judging from, the activity you get. There was a place, going back to the place in Richmond, we asked the spirits, we knew the story. We read the newspaper clippings of what happened next door. There was, if I remember right, it was like a rape murder that had occurred. And we were asking what happened in the house next door. And we had a voice come over the spirit box that said, rape. So that's a very intelligent response. It's what we're looking for. But the thing that didn't make sense about that, and I'll go into that, I actually have 5 locations I'm going to show you, 5 situations. When we asked the name of the girl who died, it said Tasha. That doesn't make sense. The girl's name, if I remember right, was Rebecca. So why did it say Tasha when the only death on the property, aside from some Confederate skirmishers, was this girl named Tasha? So that started this whole big rigmarole that might have been something, might not have. Who's Tasha? Why are the spirits saying there's a second death on property? And that led to a fun little rabbit hole. The next 3 weeks, I literally was glued to this computer looking at every possible record within a 5-mile radius. I never found anything.